Hi, everybody. I'm Dave, and joining me from Japan today is Joe Justice, former chief agilist at Tesla and SpaceX, and he's going to help us show how he helped Tesla and SpaceX with better ways of working. Joe, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today.
Dave, thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to talk to me. Together, I hope we make an awesome episode today. I hope people really enjoy it. Good morning from Japan. Good evening from
Good
you,
evening
Dave.
from
Thanks a
South
lot.
Florida. Right. Awesome. So, hey, I know you. I've followed you for a while. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about your background with Wikispeed and Tesla and SpaceX?
Sure, I invented Agile Hardware. As huge as that is to say, I feel really good about saying it because I started a hobby project to make an affordable supercar that was really efficient. Like I think a lot of people have had dreams of that. I did it, and we got to 1 week iterations where we design, build, test, apply for government approval, receive it, and sell the car in a week. The whole stack, the whole system. And that invented Agile Hardware. People said, if you can go end to end in a life critical system like a car with regulatory approvals like a car, maybe it's not just for software. And of course, people have seen Agile used in marketing and finance and pharmaceuticals, biotech, mergers and acquisitions since then. And a lot of people use my hobby project, Wikispeed, as the example. Now, that was my passion thing I wanted to do. We eventually made 14 cars, one a week. And then the customers, and some were racers, some were people just driving to work. The customers liked the process so much. Many of them continued to bring their cars back, and we would rebuild them with different modules every 1 week. And the project still continues, but at a much slower pace. When I was last involved, it was about 13 years running, and we had the process down. A few of our iterations took less than a day: design, build, test, deploy, government approvals, and out. So that started a consulting career where companies would say, well, how do you get crash testing done in just a few hours? Usually we schedule it months in advance. We budget it more than a year in advance. Then we do multiple iterations on the approval documentations. How do you do that in a day? How do you get the theft prevention, all the certifications in less than a day? And I would consult on that. But I had only done small volume. We would do a car a week. A few weeks, we refitted 3 cars in a week. So small volume. So the question I couldn't answer well is, well, how does that work in mass production? So I challenged myself applying to Tesla. And that's a whole conversation by itself. I was told I was Tesla's best interview. And that, to me, is probably the thing in my career I'm most proud of. I don't know if many other people would see it that way. For me, it is. There's more than 1,000 job applications for every open job posting at Tesla and SpaceX. And of graduating engineers worldwide, the number one and number two places they say they want to work are Tesla and SpaceX. So the top students are applying, and there's more than 1,000. And I wasn't a student. I was already an adult. Some people will say, you have to be like 20 years old to get into a Musk company. Well, here I was, like 41 at the time,
Wow.
around, I think. And I was told I was their best interview. And that's one of the tangents we can take this is, well, why? But I'll say I'm incredibly proud of that. And then I set up the Agile program there and then visited SpaceX as a Tesla employee. And I got involved in mass production. And the short piece that I want to make sure everyone listening to this knows is, yes, you can design, build, test, deploy, get government certification in mass production. Well, actually in less than a day, which is what Tesla does with thousands of units a day. So yes, it works in mass production, life critical systems, hardware, software, and they're doing pharmaceuticals at Neuralink, embedded devices, construction at the Boring Company, aerospace at Tesla, at SpaceX. So yes, you can. Then the next topics for Dave and I to work with is, how do large companies switch to this if they want to? Do they want to? How does it work? Etc. Dave, thank you so much for having me. Your career is amazing. I hope you've done several episodes on why the whole world needs to work with you. If not, some of this episode needs to be about that.
I'm honored. Thanks, Joe. I mean, this is incredible. What was it like to work at a Musk company where I could just hear some of the viewers and listeners right now saying, yeah, he can say that, but he didn't have to deal with government regulators or the Air Force or, well, actually, even SpaceX, I'm pretty sure you had to deal with the Air Force, right? So what was the secret there to get leaders to say, yeah, let's change the way we work? Maybe because it's a new company, it was easier to do that, but take us a little bit into that, please.
You're awesome, Dave. So if you have someone who wants fast iterations, fast improvement, fast innovation, whichever word you like to use, and they're the one paying people salaries, you've solved it. You cracked the code. The issue with most large companies is the people who are paying people salaries directly or indirectly. So maybe the board, the large investors, they say, tell me 5 years in advance the big moves you're going to make, and I'm going to hold you to that. That means indirectly, they don't want fast change. They don't mean to say that, but they're trying to hold a hands-off investment, and they're only viewing it as a risk. They're like, should I put my money in you or in gold? And I don't have to tell gold what to do. I
Right.
just watch it, right? And they want the same for you. I don't want to tell you what to do, but I want to intervene right away if I think you're doing the wrong thing. So tell me 5 years in advance, in some companies, 13 years in advance, what your large moves are. And I will hold you to that. And the reason they want to hold you to that is to prove you're responsible. And of course, that means you can't take advantage of new technologies on a large scale. You can't execute quickly on an emergent opportunity on a large scale. You can make tiny actions all the time, and large companies do. But if you say, actually, we're switching the majority of our budget to take advantage of a new opportunity, you can't in that structure. And that is the bottleneck. So how would we improve that? You would talk to those people that are actually making the major investments and see if they know what a responsible, highly adaptable framework is. Structure, framework. These words have very specific meanings depending on who's listening. Maybe I should say something broad like method. But what's a way to be responsible and lower risk when you're moving very fast? Because most of these people don't know any of those systems and only view it as risk. Even though a lot of them made their money by being high risk, now they're not in that mode. Most of those people that are making the signatory decisions on these large funds, if they know what it is, because most of them don't know what it is, if they know what a responsible system for moving quickly, responding quickly, making big investments quickly, responsibly, if they know what those systems are, then they can decide if they want to do it or not. But most of them don't know what it is, so they can't even decide if they want to do it. So what we're left with is currently a lot of large investments that are held to 5-year, 13-year promises on the big moves. And they do make exceptions, but it's a big political battle. And the conversation is with people not involved in the engineering or the technology. So it's the least responsible way to make a technology or engineering decision, right? And I don't mean that to be mean.
Right.
So you're left with people not informed of the current engineering capability and the detailed technical market reality, making an out of band decision. So it's largely based on who's handsome and acts trustworthy, like who has the best eye contact and best handshake. And that is the majority of business. But there is a solution, and it's for the people with the funds to know what I'll say agile. You can use a lot of words, but I'll say what agile is: a responsible way to respond quickly, take advantage of emerging opportunities quickly, responsibly, with big money. In this case, big money. Explain what it is, and then ask them if they'd like to try it with one of the companies, with all of the companies. How big do they want to go now that they know what it is? In the Musk company's case, Elon knows how to move responsibly with huge money quickly. In fact, he's a master of that. SpaceX is the largest aerospace company in the world.
Is this where ideas like Skunk Works, like just take a bunch of people, put them in the desert, separate them, there's no organizational gravity to pull them back, right? Is this kind of how Musk sets up his companies as well?
I'm sure it's very similar. I didn't work in the previous infamous Skunk Works. I have collaborated with the modern incarnation, but from what they tell me is they don't work like they used to work. They work more like a typical bureaucracy is what they tell me now. And that's what it looked like from my end. But so I didn't experience the good old Skunk Works and some of the fast moving large programs before that, like the B-52 bomber famously designed what like in a weekend or something. I might be getting the wrong aircraft, but famous examples of complex, life critical, in this case, massive military budgets being decided over a weekend with detailed design created and then approved. And in Europe as well, in the UK. I'm in Japan now and getting to see parts of the military history of Japan that I didn't have easy understanding of from growing up in America, in the United States, and some of the fast iteration cycles of all different large mass budgets. To your point, Dave, I think it is similar. So for people that believe they have a clearer or clear picture of what the good old quick moving Skunk Works looked like, it's probably similar. But there's this modern piece, and it's again, who's paying the paychecks. And a lot of the modern projects, the large budget projects, are highly politicized, and decisions aren't made all the time based on what's the best engineering or what is the highest efficacy output or what's the most efficient way to solve this problem. Sometimes they're made based on political reasons, actually always. So it means the company isn't allowed to work like good old Skunk Works anymore. It's required to work like a bureaucracy. So again, the solution would be the people that are agreeing to the budget plan, the financial plan, knowing what I'll say what Agile is, and then two, deciding if they want to sign an Agile contract. And there's awesome examples of Agile contracts in large military, large government, and private project, large project, small project, one-on-one vendor to about as big money as you can get all around the world. So you can reference those. Lean Agile procurement.
We've interviewed the expert on that on this podcast.
Catalogs those contracts, as does CRISP in Sweden. They globally. So there's US contracts as well, catalogs those contracts. The Agile Business Institute, where I'm currently chair, also catalogs some of those contracts. And many of the Musk company contracts have been open sourced or were public anyway, depending on the nature of the project. And they show you Agile contracting very clearly. So it's definitely approved, legally enforceable, and known. Does your signatory know about Agile contracting? Probably not. Do they know why it's responsible and low risk? Probably not. Then once those two are checked, then ask, okay, may we?
Right. And then, so assuming all that falls into place, are we following a Scrum team model where we have a product owner, Scrum master, or a network of Scrum teams working together?
The Musk companies don't have any Scrum. There's no Scrum masters, there's no product owners, there's no release train engineers, there's no PSIs. And they are the fastest growing companies in their market space of all globally. Aerospace, automotive, embedded medical devices, construction, all of them. So clearly you win without Scrum. That said, Scrum takes 2 days to learn. It's made to be a bootstrap that you use to pull on your boots and then take off and put away, right? So I don't know if anyone knows this analogy. As I understand the analogy is horse riding boots, military boots were difficult to get your foot all the way in up to your calf. So there's this strap, and some modern boots have a strap on them. There's this strap, but then that's to pull your boot on, which was not easy, and then button it up. And then that strap would get in the way in marches or riding. So you take it off. And you don't throw it away. You might need it later to put your boot on again. So you put it away. Well, Scrum since the beginning has been called a bootstrap. And that's the idea. So it's not like the Musk companies need Scrum anymore, but if you want to get towards rapid innovation on large, small, legal, hardware, whatever life critical projects, you probably want that bootstrap to move towards it. So yeah, 2 days of training, you can have teams running with a method, Scrum, which is an awesome gateway. It forces teams to try to think in 30-day or less chunks and get something done. Now, where Scrum, I think, can be used incorrectly and miss the value is where people don't ship anything in 30 days. Or like, well, we've been planning for our first 4 30-day sprints. And you're like, you're didn't change anything, just words. And those words obviously aren't the part that's useful. So sure, use Scrum as a bootstrap and then take it off, disband Scrum. You don't need product owners, Scrum masters, RTEs, any of the other trappings that people put around it. But I do think it's a fantastic gateway towards getting people testing and releasing hardware, software, contracts in less than 30 days. Well, what do you think about that, Dave?
So I think this is a great point because, I talk to my peers in other companies and industries, right? And just training agile teams in and of itself is not the goal. And so that's where I ask people, okay, what does success look like? And yes, you've got these teams they're like ninjas that, turn stuff around. It doesn't have to be every day or every week, but they handle the impediments themselves. They have, the whatever levers they need to pull to make things happen. And I've heard this also. I think you've just confirmed that there's an evolution that goes on, and Scrum is like a booster, and then you get rid of the booster and teams are doing whatever. It's the Shuhari thing, if you remember that from years ago, right? Now they're making up the rules and they can't explain what the rules are, but they're doing it, right?
And I think we can use that booster, Scrum, again. Like if a group of people aren't testing and releasing in 30 days or less, we can introduce it again, retrain, recoach, say, where did we miss it? And then dispose of it again. And I think that's maybe the good indicator. Is there any product that's not testing and releasing in 30 days or less? Okay, well, probably go through, for example, Scrum training again, coaching again, until they are. That's the doctor's analysis and prescribed solution. And I think that's a pretty solid approach. There are other approaches that clearly work. The Musk companies never had Scrum, but I think this is also an approach that works. And I think given who's probably listening to this podcast, I think it applies to the skills of a lot of people who are listening to this podcast.
Great. And so let's talk about Joe DX, because you've tried to encapsulate a lot of this, and this is what you teach now. So tell us about Joe DX and how it can help.
When a big company does decide to have fast iterations, the people who are paying people salaries say, yes, what we want is fast improvement, fast iterations, fast tested quality releases. They decide they want to do that. Then the way they launch teams probably changes. Instead of assigning annual performance goals to new hires, they probably want a team-based motivation. And they probably want a set of team-based work rules to keep quality high when people are working really fast together. So the team launch system probably needs an update. So I teach that. I say, here's one that worked, and I use examples from inside Tesla and inside SpaceX, and then make that collaboratively with whoever is responsible for launching teams, typically part of human resources, and then some functions that have to deal with the skills of people being hired. Ideally, it would be the product that's being hired, but these companies, typically it starts with people responsible for skills groups. Then what products are important to innovate first? It can be all. That's actually easier, but many companies say, let's start with product A, B, and C, and not yet D, E, F. So which products are they? Then what piece of that do we make ourselves, design, build, test, deploy ourselves, that we want to go really fast first? And that's often hard because companies have outsourced everything. So which of these do we want to give in-house, or do you move back in-house? Or do you want me to go to Taiwan or Mexico or Korea to work with those people? Because the next piece has to do with the people doing that work. And so sometimes I then go to wherever that location is, like Denso here in Japan on behalf of Toyota. And the people that are doing the work physically, not planning it, but doing it, it's how would we re-split the pieces of this software, this hardware, so that the procurement is less laggy, so that the engineering is less laggy, so we have a faster response on if our new ideas are functional. Because a lot of these companies, they have one person approving budget for circuit boards, and then another group in another time zone that's outsourced part of the work, drawing the 3D models of the multi-layered circuit boards. And often that's already fractured. So it's already about different companies. And then it's sent off to another company, sometimes multiple companies, for fabrication for a circuit board turn. And they go, how come circuit boards take us 2 years at the fastest? I go, if I actually go to the company that's making the circuit board and say, how quickly can you make a new circuit board design? Sometimes they'll say same day. It's your system, not that circuit boards take a long time. So if we want to make this go much faster, let's go to the places where the circuit board is being made. And that then starts to solve the problem. Say to them, which parts of these should be different circuit boards so you can iterate more quickly. How many circuit boards should this really be? Or different layers or groupings, daughter boards, etc. So we resplit at the point things are actually made. And we try to put design and ideally test at the point of fabrication in the same room within 3 meters where you can see the machines making things. So yes, it smells. This is how you do it. People are like, I'm a CAD engineer. I don't want to be where it smells like melting silicon. It's like, I've got no room for you in my company. There's nothing I need you to do. All you're going to do is add 3 months of wait and see into this process. And at the same time, this is where the respect for people, part of lean, becomes
Mm-hmm.
super useful. Well, then maybe we need better ventilation over the
Mm-hmm.
machines that are melting silicon.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe we actually need that to be a nicer place. It's like, no, the factory is for bad people and it should look like hell. No, maybe, maybe the factory should be a pleasant place, which it can be. I mean, you can have a place that smells like a nice restaurant and looks fancy, that is in high production, high volume production with a high rate of turn, and that is not noisy, that doesn't hurt your ears. It is totally possible and still moves fast and changes fast. So now we're at the respect for people part, and it goes back to the team launch. So now we're getting to step 2 of 11 of Joe DX. There's only 11 steps. So of course, budgeting changes because we want to be able to reallocate large capital when an emerging opportunity happens. So how do we do that responsibly? So that's Joe DX budgeting piece. And the contracts will evolve as well. So that's then the Joe DX contracting piece. Then employee performance measures should be different. So I use digital self-management where you collaborate with AI to improve yourself as quickly as possible. Now that breaks a traditional perceived incentive. The idea that like we'll pay people as little as we can to get them in the company, and then we'll give them promotions when we think they're going to leave, and cost of living incentives only when they notice, right? Employees are viewed as a cost, and it's maximally disrespectful for people. And the problem is in knowledge work, you have people that you hope are knowledgeable and intelligent, and they notice that. They notice it right away. They go, actually, I should go work somewhere else where they pay me better. So you have high mobility among knowledge workers, high abandonment, right? And then HR complains, how do we get retention up? There's really 2 very simple solutions. Either one works. One, you create a fair system where you say, here's how much money's coming in, everyone can see it. And here's how much costs we have each day, and everyone can see it. And here's the percentage going to each person.
So
That
you can see
actually
everybody's
works.
salary.
There's different pieces of transparency that are required for people to think it's fair. And you don't have to show everyone's salary, but you can. And you can show everyone's salary. And if it's fair, it works. But if you're like, how come the CEO's son makes 7 times more than anyone, and I'm the critical piece for this project? Like, as soon as you notice injustice, that system breaks down. But if you actually have justice and want to, and when you find injustice, you act on it same day, fairly, right? Not like punitively, but like you try to make it more just, right? That works. Transparency works. The other way is you run the business where you reinvest essentially 100% of profit back into R&D. And that's a really honest way of solving a problem. If the people at the money's theory is run this business to solve a problem, the world needs X, civilization needs X. Well, then of course you'd use any money, any means, any person power you have into solving that problem better and faster, because that's the purpose of the company. And that works great. That's actually what the Musk companies do. So Elon shows on a scoreboard, here's how much money came in today. And there's a number under it that says, here's how much money went out today, salaries, procurement, etc. And you can see a color, which is it less than 2% gap? And if it is, everything's great. And then to keep the justice part of it, Elon quite visibly sleeps in a sleeping bag in the factory. So you're like, well, he's working harder than me. So whereas Jeff Bezos is on a super yacht with stupid models. And you're like, maybe I'm being taken advantage of working in Amazon or Blue Origin, right?
Right.
Well, you get engineers that are highly portable in
Right.
Amazon or Blue Origin. But either of those things solve it. You either quite visibly use all the money to improve the mission, whatever the mission is, or you show as much transparency as you can figure out. And then people often ask, is that legal? Are you allowed to be transparent? It's actually illegal to not be transparent with your finances if you're publicly traded. And most companies are operating in a gray area. They're
Wow.
actually required to be transparent with their finances. That's actually the law for a publicly traded company. So that should be normal. The fact that it's not shows the level of corruption that is tolerated or enforced by almost every company on earth. I mean, that's what it is 1-to-1, because it's actually the law to be transparent with finances in a publicly traded company. But those two solutions work. And then each of those two options are explained in Joe DX. Is it that we're passionate about the product, or we're going to operate with maximal fairness? Because otherwise we will have trouble retaining talent, and you'll want to start being secret about salaries because you pay people more when they threaten to leave. Threatens maybe the wrong word, because the just action is on the side of the employee in that
Yeah.
case.
If they are getting a better offer, right? So,
Yeah. So you're covering up your unfairness. And then that's where you want to game, because you're not doing the right thing as a company. That's where you would then be incented to gamify people to say, here's your annual improvement goal. And we'll use that to justify underpaying you so that we can give a lot of money back to our hands-off shareholders, or so that we can be unfair in other ways. So I think that's why Joe DX is associated with companies that actually are passionate about a product or a mission.
maybe we'll have a part 2 sometime. We really enjoyed it. And you're welcome back anytime on the podcast. I'm just throwing it out there. How can people get a hold of you before we stop the recording here?
You're fantastic. I'm most responsive on X, so you can
Okay.
message me anything, anytime. I'm Joe Justice on X. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, missing a big one. And I'm Joe Justice or Joe A Justice on all of those. The picture looks like me. And I'm happy to be reached. I'm chair of the Agile Business Institute. For business inquiries, reach me there, joe@abi-agile.com. And you can absolutely reach me through Dave.
Yeah,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.